I mean, this is like slightly better. Turn off the heart.
Welcome to Electrified. It's your host, Dylan Loomis. So first up today, Todd Rogers, one of Tesla's maintenance techs, said that the last Megapack has been built at Giga Nevada, meaning going forward, all Megapacks will be produced in Lathrop, which of course is where they will have better margins, and perhaps more importantly, this should open up space and resources at Giga Nevada for Tesla semi-production and perhaps more 2170 cell production as well. Just in case you're new, Tesla has laid out plans to invest about $3.5 billion to expand manufacturing capabilities at Giga Nevada, specifically with plans to produce high volumes of the semi-truck and to make enough cell batteries for 2 million light-duty vehicles every year in Giga Nevada. As we were told, summer of last year, Tesla would be phasing out the original Megapack called the MP1 and shifting to the newer MP2. But simultaneously, they also mentioned the MP2 XL, which is what Lathrop is producing now. And don't forget, we were told that the MP2 XL is actually cheaper to produce than the older MP1 system because they switched over to CATL's prismatic LFP cells. And they did tell us that Tesla would end the MP2 production by the first quarter of this year and only produce the MP2 XL thereafter. So going forward, it sounds like only the Tesla Megapack 2 XL and all will be built in Lathrop. That is of course only until Shanghai comes online. August of last year, the Model 3 long range was removed from the configurator. Elon said the wait list was too long. Will enable again as we ramp production. Well, about 9 months later, and finally the long-range all-wheel drive Model 3 is now available, $47,240 for 325 plus miles of range. I believe that plus is just an estimate because the official EPA range test has not been done. And a 0 to 60 time of 4.2 seconds, which is very good performance, and typically the LFP packs that many are speculating is what this is are a bit slower than that, so we'll come back to that in a second. And the current estimated delivery time frame is June, where the other two Model 3 options are currently in May. Here's where the debate ensues though. The Model 3 long-range all-wheel drive only qualifies for a $3,750 federal tax credit, or half of the full amount. So when it comes to Model 3 and Y eligibility, we now have two Model 3 variants that are only half of the credit. The Performance gets the full, and then all Model Y variants get the full credit. Look, I'm definitely not ready to be dogmatic about what cells they're using, what type of pack it is, because it's just impossible to know for sure at this stage, in my opinion. But either way, let's just run through some things to consider. Again, that range number of 325 could ultimately be higher or lower, so we can't draw too many conclusions until the official EPA number is out. And don't forget, when the Model 3 long range was removed from the configurator in the summer of last year, it was getting 358 miles of range, and it cost $58,000 at the time. So could this car be using LFP cells from China, which is why it would only get half the credit? Maybe, but that would be a lot more range than the current rear-wheel drive Model 3 that only gets 272 miles of range that is using those LFP cells. As I said, if it was LFP, personally, I would expect the Performance 0 to 60 number to be a bit slower. Just keep in mind that variant before it was removed, getting 358 miles of range using NCA or NCM cells, you're really only supposed to charge up to 90%. That gives us 90% usable, which is actually 322 miles of usable range. Whereas if this car is using LFP cells, you can charge to 100% all the time. They encourage it, which is again right around 325. This pack could also be CATL's new M3P cells we've been hearing about, but remember, these are actually different than the LFMP, which is lithium iron manganese phosphate. Just remember, there are differences. Maybe the pack's actually still using 2170 cells and the NCA or NCM chemistries, but perhaps they're just being imported from a different country, which again could be the reason why it's only getting half the credit. Tesla could also be varying the actual size of the pack, which would throw all of our numbers and assumptions off, so that just adds another layer of uncertainty. And then sadly, the question still remains is how does the Project Highland Model 3 refresh fit into all of this? Hopefully we have answers by Q3, but do we get performance and spec upgrades, or is it really just a design change? I guess only time will tell. But honestly, guys, at the end of the day, for the average consumer, none of what I just talked about actually matters. The only thing that matters is that this vehicle, which should be the best-selling Model 3 variant, is back available again, which should mean very good things for Model 3 sales. I will add, this variant is not available in Canada as of now. Figured it was a good time to mention from Benchmark that the LFP cathode material in China fell to a 17-month low in the middle of April. The price of LFP cathodes in China has fallen 42% so far this year. Mainly driven by all of that new investment in LFP cell production last year, now finally starting to come online. On LinkedIn, Idra also shared this image saying the future of die casting is not only gigapress, this machine will produce electric motor rotors. And it has the Tesla red color, which means maybe this will be going to Tesla. In the past, Tesla has done die casting for other parts, so it would not be a surprise at all. Samuel Garcia, the governor of Nuevo Leon, just tweeted out, "We're acquiring the world's experience to make the most of the installation of the Tesla plant in Nuevo Leon. For this reason, we visited its first plant, Fremont, where the 4 car models are produced and already have 22,000 workers. However, we're still waiting for the official green light for Giga Mexico." Tread cautiously with this one. I would paint it as a rumor for sure, but a Chinese source said that the Times Finance learned from a Tesla store's sales consultant in Beijing that the number of people ordering Tesla cars has increased significantly, and the number of people buying after the price increase is up significantly. As Sawyer pointed out, a cool Tesla fun fact, Tesla is currently on average opening 1 new supercharger site globally every 13 hours. A few quick notes from Ford's earnings release specifically for the Model E division, which is their EVs. On the lower Q1 wholesale sales, just remember F-150 Lightning production was down so they could fix some battery problems, and the Mach-E production was down for a bit as they retooled the line so they could actually double the production capacity. But when it comes to the earnings before interest and tax margin for the EV business, it's negative 102%, which just means that if Ford is selling an EV for $50,000, it's basically costing them over $100,000 to make it. Obviously, that's not sustainable, so the question becomes, well, what did Ford say about this going forward? On the call, Ford said they're on track this year toward a contribution margin approaching break even in the Model E division. Contribution margin is simple. It's really just sales or revenue minus the variable costs. It really tells a company what specific product profitability is and how it changes based on revenue changes. So whatever is left over after removing those variable costs is then going to be there to actually cover the fixed costs. So Ford is expecting its Model E business to bring in more revenue than at least the variable costs by this year, and then for their first generation products like the Mach-E, F-150 Lightning, they're expecting those to be EBIT margin positive by the end of 2024. So for Ford to go from negative 102% EBIT margin now to any positive number in the next less than 2 years would be a huge accomplishment. Color me skeptical. Because just using that hypothetical $50,000 EV number, right now it costs Ford $102,000 to make that car. So can they remove $52,000 in cost over the next less than 2 years? It's a big task. They also said, we expect Ford Model E EBIT margin to improve to around negative 20% in the second half of this year. But here's the thing, this primarily will be based on their ability to drive significantly higher sales volumes. Ford did say that through the end of this year, they'll have reduced the bill of materials for the Mach-E by $5,000 per vehicle. Ford has also said, we're not going to price just to gain market share. We're quite different than maybe some of the pure EV players that are pricing just for growth. They said Ford's second generation is where they can really make hay. And they added, we do not subscribe to a win vehicle share at any cost approach. There's a reason lately I've been talking about Tesla's captive financing, and we get confirmation from Ford as they said we've seen a number of banks pulling back from auto lending, and they don't see it getting a lot better over the coming months for banks. And when it comes to cost reductions for the bill of materials, Ford said we have a significant reduction in play on the Lightning as well. So it'll be very interesting to see if Ford passes on those savings to the customer with lower F-150 Lightning prices, or will the Cybertruck entering the market blow that up and change the game. Farley again reiterated how he thinks the price cuts in the EV space is a worrying trend. Ford also waved the white flag when it comes to in-car entertainment, saying that we kind of lost that battle 10 years ago, and he was getting at how they're going to keep Apple CarPlay in its future vehicles. Sounds like right now Ford isn't even going to attempt to have its own in-car software UI. My biggest takeaway from all of this is what this will mean for the other legacy OEMs and their electric car divisions. No one else is really giving this level of transparency, but we can expect the numbers to be in a similar realm. Not great right now. That's of course to be expected, but as Morgan Stanley has been pointing out, will now some of these legacy OEMs kind of pull back on their spending and the transition to EVs and opt to be more niche-like players, basically being super selective and careful where they actually choose to compete, as Ford just said they were going to do. That would of course be awesome for Tesla, but as somebody who wants the EV transition to happen, I'm not sure these numbers being public is going to expedite that process. And honestly, right now, none of the legacy OEMs have proven they can even make EVs at scale, let alone do it affordably. So there's still huge challenges to overcome. You guys know I don't get political. I'm not picking sides here or anything. I'm just sharing the facts. I just wanted to put this on your radar that a new bill that did indeed pass the House, the Limit Save Grow Act of 2023, would significantly scale back the federal support for renewable energy and energy storage that's been enabled by the Inflation Reduction Act. Not only is this bill looking to pull back on all of the great things the IRA has done so far, but it also would hope to increase investments in the country's fossil fuel sector. For what it's worth, there are some lawyers out there saying at a federal level you can't unwind this being the IRA. Rivian has announced the official IIHS results for the R1S, and it joins the R1T as winning the highest safety award for 2023, the Top Safety Pick Plus, and this was after the standards and requirements were even harder to achieve as of this year. So honestly, great for Rivian. In an email from Starlink to customers, they said your subscription will remain unlimited and will no longer be deprioritized after 1 terabyte of data use. You can also now easily change your service plan on your account portal or the Starlink app, and here are the 4 services available. You can find me on Twitter at DylanLoomis22. Hope you guys have a wonderful day. Please like the video if you did, and a huge thank you to all of my Patreon supporters.